here we go for the first edition of Oh my god, I can't believe you actually remember this too! In this case, we're talking about Zathura, a space adventure. Won't be doing that for the whole video, don't worry. But, in case you don't know, if you haven't read the title, yes, this is a movie. And you've probably seen it at least once when you were a kid. I know I've definitely seen it quite a few times, and I absolutely loved it. And to this day, I still find it a very enjoyable film. Great action scenes, beautiful set pieces, amazing performances from such young actors, and amazing direction from Jon Favreau, who I consider one of the best storytellers in the modern film age. I mean, one second he's directing a Christmas comedy, and another moment he's directing a superhero film that made history, so to speak. But unfortunately, unlike a lot of Jon Favreau's famous films, this is often forgotten about. And that's largely because the Jumanji franchise, which is where this thing hailed from in the first place, has definitely gotten back into the spotlight quite recently, with two pretty good sequel movies, Welcome to the Jungle and Next Level. And I'd want to shed some light on this for a little bit. And it's also an obligation because this is another Patreon raffle, which is why this is not a spooky video. Thanks, Azarius. So if you also want to have your idea become a reality on a Media Mementos video, then please consider donating to the Patreon. There's a link in the description below. But first, a little bit of a history lesson. Jumanji was initially a book written in 1981 by Chris Van Allsburg, who would later go on to write the widely famous Polar Express, which was released in 1985. Due to the success of Jumanji as a book, he made a follow-up story, immediately following the events of the original book and its crazy jungle hijinks, this time following two boys venturing into space after finding a mysterious board game. Yeah, that just reuse your old plots, huh? It's a pretty good book. Does the similar job that Jumanji did, having that thrilling sense of excitement, but also a little bit of an ominous vibe as well. I mean, come on, if you're a kid going very deep in this space, I'm pretty sure you'd be terrified as well, no matter how old you are, how much you love space. It's too soon to go into the farthest reaches of the galaxy. And I guess on that note as well, technically the Polar Express has overshadowed both of them as a book, but Jumanji is definitely better known, and I definitely have read the book at some point in my childhood. I didn't even know Zathura was even based on a book or even a sequel to Jumanji until, well, a little bit later in my life. Even with the whole tagline of "from the same universe as Jumanji" in the title. Yeah, it's not necessarily a direct sequel like in the book, and that's largely because Jon Favreau, the director, actually didn't really like the Jumanji movie all that much. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if you're a director, would you really want to reference a movie you don't like in your film? Unless you're, targeting it, like what happened with Looney Tunes Back in Action towards Space Jam? Yeah, I wouldn't think you would either. Following the immense success of the Jumanji feature film, Zathura was definitely next in line for a film adaptation. And unlike Jumanji's very big reliance on mostly CGI mixed in with practical sets and creature effects, Zathura went for pretty much all practical effects. Real alien suits, a real giant robot, real fire, real tearing up the walls and destroying floors and meteorites and all that kind of crap. Miniatures were also used for not only the house, but also the spaceships that the aliens controlled, which also took a lot from Star Wars. So yeah, they just did not even use that much CGI unless it was the backgrounds and the black hole at the end. Obviously, necessary stuff that you wouldn't really achieve with, say, a piece of cardboard with paint on it. And given that Jon Favreau's last film was Elf, which was also a pretty practical effects heavy, set dress heavy film, it definitely makes sense that he would continue that streak with a sci-fi movie, taking a lot of inspiration from stuff like Star Wars and Alien. And it's actually kind of funny to think about the Star Wars influence, because he would later go on to create The Mandalorian. You should really check it out on Disney Plus if you have it. And even the actors really have a lot of fun on the set for the practical effects alone. Kristen Stewart, the main actress of the film, even said that it was much more fun to work with all the practical effects and actually tearing up the walls and interacting with fire and all that stuff. And also, I'm pretty sure the kids had a lot of fun too. I mean, they're going to be more engaged when seeing all this stuff in person and actually wanting to participate in the story and the filmmaking process, rather than just throw them in front of a green screen or have them talk to a tennis ball and a stick in a very bland-looking house. A bland-looking house that would also probably not have damage to it. Now, of course, working with all these practical effects and making sure that the actors were safe and secure on set was definitely not an easy task. I mean, obviously, you think about all this kind of stuff, you really got to commend people for going this route when making these kind of films, because it's easy to go with CGI and green screen because, well, no duh, you're gonna basically just acting with nothing. You're just looking around with reference points and all that stuff. Not necessarily going through all this heavy turmoil to build everything and interact with stuff, destroying it. But in Zathura, I mean, just look at it, right? And Favreau even admitted that there was one complicated shot in particular that definitely was, in his words, an overwhelming experience. In particular, there is a part when the house was caught in the gravity field of Taurus 3. The stage was mounted on top of a gimbal 30 to 40 feet off the ground and was only allowed to be titled close to 40 degrees. Yeah. And the cast and crew had to be safely secured with cables and harnesses. And man, you could just imagine how difficult that was to make sure that shot worked and that, the actors weren't just completely caught off guard in all the wires and harnesses. Yikes, I'm getting a lot of Team America painful, tedious vibes from this description. I don't know why. I think it goes for any movie, to be fair, but dang. Yeah, it's always fun to talk about that kind of stuff. And honestly, in my argument as well, knowing about this, Zathura is easily one of the best showcases of going practical. Definitely has its challenges, and it's definitely more time consuming, but if you put enough love and care into it, the final product is quite a treasure, and it's definitely more engaging for you, the viewer, because you're not just looking at, oh, look at that CGI. I mean, have you seen Hulk in 2003? That CGI was still dated for even back then, man. God. And with the constant diligence you have on set and working with all these other crew members and artists that also share your vision and passion, the end result is definitely far more accomplishing to look at. You just get that feeling that you made something great, no matter how bad it may have been. Even something like Monkey Bone, which, Jesus Christ, that movie was awful, but you still gotta admire all the hell they went through to make all those practical sets and creature effects. And the same thing can apply to other movies as well. You think about Little Shop of Horrors and Audrey 2 or any Muppet production. It's ironic that I bring up those movies too, because Frank Oz actually voices the giant robot. Yeah, that's actually kind of a cool cameo. I keep forgetting about that myself, and you've listened really carefully, you can definitely tell it's him. Just a little tidbit there. And honestly, if it weren't for this film, I don't think Jon Favreau would have gotten this great jumpstart in making movies like Iron Man or Cowboys and Aliens, or again, spearheading The Mandalorian, all of which I believe are amazing works of his, which is why I definitely consider this a landmark in his filmography and just his career in general. And it really needs more attention, especially given that all these new Jumanji films are coming out, and they are even considering going to the Zathura idea and actually setting something in space. I really hope this means that people can go look back on this film and appreciate it for what it set out to do with all these insane effects, as well as the immense love put into this. And of course, Jon Favreau flexing his love of science fiction, especially stuff from the 1950s. Oh, and Star Wars. I can't forget Star Wars. Despite all the hard work, the film unfortunately did not do very well. It really just made exactly back its budget with just one fraction of extra money in there. And I think that's why no one really remembers it, because Jumanji was a very big success when it came out, and it's revered to this day, but due to the very weird, I wouldn't say failure, but definitely poor box office returns of Zathura, that definitely really swept it under the rug, even though it spearheaded what I believe to be an amazing line of work from the director. So yeah, if you really have the time, go check it out. Now it's on Tubi, so you can watch it for free with a few ads here and there, but I'd say it's definitely worth it. And yeah, that's all I gotta say about Zathura. Very technical, and I wasn't comparing it too much to Jumanji, but they're so different from each other that I can't really bring myself to make a proper comparison. I mean, not just for the land and space difference, but just the tone in general, and the direction just feels very different. And yeah, that's it again. I'll also take this time to thank the Patreon executive producers: Leaf Razor, Rezeal, Sophie Burgers, Azarius, the guy who requested this, and Tanner Kapishki. If you want your name to be read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then please consider donating to the Patreon. Link is in the description below, and I am going to assure you there's going to be a lot more weird fantasy, science fiction, kids films from back in the day that I'm going to just remind you of. Get ready for some really wild throwbacks next year. I'm just going to tell you that.